in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ready or not, here we go.
Navi! Yeah, probably the most annoying character on here, and a lot of people will be hammering away at the keyboard writing angry messages because of this as I speak. But if you think about it, Navi does support Link in quite the underestimated manner. Without Navi, Link would have certainly missed a lot of important objects and points of interest in Ocarina of Time. In fact, he wouldn't have been able to even aim his bow at anyone, which kind of suggests to me that Link is a bit absent-minded, and if that's the case, then the great Deku tree at the beginning sure knows how to pick them for saving the world if his best bet is someone who needs a microscopic fairy to point out what's right in front of him. That said, if Navi wasn't there, then consider Hyrule Ganons. Joe Barbaro. Probably mispronounced that. Joe's the supporting character to Vito in Mafia 2. Good game, by the way, go get it. But as Vito returns from the Second World War to a glorious life of crime, he's always accompanied by his buddy Joe, who never abandons him even at the worst of times. But I guess the main reason why Joe is on here is because of his AI. He seems to be aware of what I was doing during missions and would often comment on it. Not only that, but he'd react to it too, meaning that if I was advancing on an enemy position, then he would be doing the same but in a flanking manoeuvre, which is exactly what I would have asked him to do if this was real life. This meant that if I died in a gunfight, I could always chalk it down to not staying in cover enough or letting the enemy get the better of me, and never on my ally AI letting me down, which is still quite rare even nowadays in gaming. Zack. This entry is a strange one, as Zack doesn't technically exist for most of the game. Deadly Premonition is a low-budget game from 2010, but I can't stress enough how much you should buy it. You can now get the Director's Cut version on Steam, go check it out. I won't spoil it, but Zack is referred to many times throughout the game. You play the part of FBI agent Mr. Francis York Morgan, who is a brilliant detective who also seems to have some form of connection to the other side. But call him York, everyone else does. Throughout the game, York will converse with a disembodied figure called Zack, and for almost the entire game, we know nothing of Zack, except that the pair have been very close for many years. But although we don't get to see him, Zack does assist the player in ways of context, for it is Zack who is able to highlight key objects, and will allow you to piece together the crime that you are investigating as it took place. He also provides what can really be seen as a sixth sense to the player, and it is this that will allow you to progress further into the game, as well as picking up key points and concepts that you may have otherwise missed, which makes it that much more meaningful when you finally find out who Zack is.
Lane Goodman.
Gaz! Contrary to what some believe, but I'm not actually a dirty Call of Duty fanboy. It's true, I do own most of the titles, though I've been avoiding the Black Ops and Ghost titles like the fucking plague, but I liked the series back when it was set in World War II. I don't think much of Modern Warfare as the story wasn't that great and the multiplayer for the obvious reasons, and I really feel that the series has just gone downhill even more since then. But I will say one thing, Gaz was a pretty good character. Good in the sense that he seemed to have some form of sense. I don't know how everyone else felt, though I've heard people say the same, but this dude seemed to have his head screwed on in a fight. And whilst I was crouched behind a conveniently placed wall that comes up to my belly button and getting the shit kicked out of me by a grenade being thrown over every 5 seconds, I swear these games should have been called Call of Grenades. Gaz was the only one trying to provide some covering fire and in a tactically sensible position, whilst the rest of them, such as Mustache, Price and everyone else, just stood out in the open, taking enough damage that would have killed me 1,000 times over, but because they're not human they can take it. I was actually quite gutted when Gaz died. Well, gutted isn't the right word. I guess I was annoyed that the only good thing about the series got killed off for dramatic effect. Moving on. Simone Cole. You know, I find I'm talking about Clive Barker's Jericho much more than I probably should. Including some of the most bone-chilling sights that you'll ever see, and the countless lakes of blood that you'll be falling over every few seconds, Alkali goes down as my personal #1 most messed up location in any video game. Meaning you'll have to double up on roles as both a one-man army and battlefield medic, much like my experience with Clive Barker's Jericho. But unlike Jericho, there's nothing here to excite me. That and I'm not hearing that Father Rawlings is down every 5 fucking seconds. But in the end, this game didn't make Clive Barker much money, so his game writing days were over. Oh. It's not that I thought it was particularly good. I mean, the gameplay was a little on the bland side, and at times it felt like a glorified carnival shooting gallery, but the setting is probably what impressed me the most. But here we have Simone Cole, marksman and reality hacker. That's right, she can hack reality, causing time distortions, and being able to download materials and equipment in real time to the team when needed. This is a huge issue when playing this game, as naturally, Alkali doesn't have ammo boxes conveniently lying about the place, as I'm sure that the Romans, Crusaders and Sumerians were not aware of bullets. Though the Nazis were, but I guess those were the wrong type of bullets. Jericho's answer to this is to get Cole to download some ammo to your gun, and always exactly when you need it. There were so many occasions where I'd be fighting back a horde of enemies, and getting down to my last few rounds, looking around to find that my team is wavering, with Father Rawlings already out of the fight as soon as someone noticed an enemy soldier a few miles away. And it is at this point that I was considering to panic. That was until Simone Cole downloaded some more ammo to my gun in the nick of time, allowing me to get straight back into the fight. If that's not supportive, then call me a cheeseburger. A level 10 Dark Angel. Okay, this one's a bit of a cheat, as this isn't a character in the same sense as everyone else on this list. And neither is it an NPC, but a fully upgraded Dark Angel in the real-time strategy game Dungeon Keeper 2 is death on legs. Although not being as strong in defense as compared to a Black Knight, nor can it come back to life in the same sense as the Vampire, the Dark Angel is the strongest of them all, being able to one-hit kill most enemies, summon hailstorms, and skeleton armies to assist. If you have one of these in your army, then the fight is pretty much won before you even use the Call to Arms spell, as this creature will just hack his way through the line of enemies and creatures or heroes until he reaches the dungeon heart, making your life just that much easier. The Darkness. That's the darkness from the darkness, not the darkness the game, but the entity known as the darkness. Okay, now I'm confusing myself. Although Jackie Estacado is all bummed out because he's a cross between Don Corleone and Hugh Hefner with an emo haircut, with all the power in the world, sitting on a throne made of money, with cars made of gold and whores all donned in Sex Panther perfume, he's also burdened with a really inconvenient power that allows him to grow 2 huge shallow tentacles from his back and rip anyone who pisses him off to pieces. However, the Darkness is actually an autonomous entity, which does want to work in symbiosis with Jackie, but also kind of wants him to do what it wants rather than letting Jackie have his own way. But despite arguably trying to consume Jackie's soul, the Darkness does empower him with abilities
some consider to be unnatural.
If being able to shield yourself from gunfire whilst regenerating your health, and then pulling apart the bodies of enemies that thought they could mess with your emo haircut isn't good enough, then try Imp Conjuring on for size. Even if the room's too bright for Jackie's goth persona to handle, then sending in a demonic terrorist imp strapped with explosives to take care of the problem should put your mind at ease, whilst you deal with the possibility of having your eternal soul eaten by a dark force, which, considering Jackie's lifestyle up until that point, was probably gonna happen anyway, even without the Darkness helping out.
It was those 3 words to save my life.
Rambi! Rambi is a rhinoceros from the Donkey Kong franchise, who supports the Kong in question, much in the same way that the level 10 Dark Angel did in Dungeon Keeper 2, in that he'll simply mow down any enemy in his path. The only difference here is that you're actually riding him. Jump on his back and let him sprint through a huge section of the level, killing all Kremlins in his path, and he even has the ability of jumping too, and to a surprising height as well. I don't know if you're aware of it, but rhinoceroses can't really jump that high. Or at all, come to think of it. And they certainly don't have monkeys called donkeys riding their backs for a free trip. Elizabeth Comstock. These last 2 entries were a close call, as it was difficult to decide who should get the number 1 spot. And the only reason why Elizabeth comes in at number 2 is because she never gets involved in the combat. Same reason why Ellie from The Last of Us didn't make the list at all, seeing as she spent most of her time during my playthrough running up to the enemy and kneeing them in the bollocks, which I still somehow managed to not recognise and walk right past her as if she wasn't there. But back to Elizabeth. Spoiler alert, as I'm going to ruin the plot of Bioshock Infinite if you haven't played it already. Elizabeth Comstock is the daughter of the prophet Zachary Comstock, but is really your daughter from your reality that you gave up because you're a drunk and now you want her back. But what makes Elizabeth such a brilliant character are a number of issues. And whilst I could go into how her personality is so genuine and lifelike, I'll save that because otherwise I'll be going off point and making an idiot of myself, like a blind man trying to look for the toilets in a strip club. And this list is about supportive characters, so what makes Elizabeth so supportive? Well, like Simone Cole from earlier, Elizabeth will spend most of her time in combat supporting the player with goods and ammo rather than actual combat. If you start to run low on ammo, Elizabeth has miraculously found some and throws it your way. Run out of health packs? Elizabeth just found one of those too, and just when you thought you were done for. And speaking of combats, the last thing we really want to do in these situations is to be trying to keep back the enemy whilst constantly running to your ally's rescue every 10 seconds, as we learnt in Resident Evil 4. Even when you're not in combat, she's constantly finding money about the place, and not once does she pocket that shit for herself. She always throws it to you. Yes, you, the man who gave her away as a child and has promised to take her away from Colombia and to lead her to Paris, which you blatantly weren't ever going to do, and instead take her on an unnecessary tour of the multiverse. Best role model ever.
One more time, got me feeling so free.
Do I honestly have to explain who this next one is? Who is the #1 best voted for video game character who comes across as if she's... that's a hint. As if she's being played by a real life person who can think for herself and does not hinder Freeman in any way, whoops, that's another hint slip, and appears to do everything in her power to assist in completing the task at hand without hijacking it from the player, meaning that she's helping you out rather than taking control. I really don't think I need to explain in any great detail why Alyx Vance, whoops, another hint, is possibly the most supportive video game character ever, but hey, that's a lot of people's opinions, and it's mine too. And I'm sure that someone in the next few moments is about to lecture me as to why my opinion is worse than Satan.
Sometimes I think this life is killing me.